everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And before we get started with the episode, I just want to let all of our listeners know, and I know we have a lot of listeners overseas, and they will probably be very interested to know this. So a few episodes back, there was the saga of my recycling bin. Now, my recycling bin evaporated. Nobody knows where it went. Did it go to a different planet or a different dimension? Did a neighbor steal it? Did the man in the rubbish truck thing take it with him? Who knows? Anyhow, so for the last almost 3 weeks, at the end of our road where we put our dustbins has been a lone blue recycling bin. Now, as I've been coming home late from gigs, I've seen that blue recycling bin there. And I'm thinking, is that ours? And in fact, I even went to look at it a week or so ago, and it's not ours, I don't think, because ours had our number.
How would you know?
Well, I'd put a sticker on the lid with our number on it.
Oh, that makes sense where you live.
Yeah, but that number had actually peeled off because they were just like cheap paper stickers, but you could see the outline of the sticker. So I knew it was mine. But this one did not have that on it. So I came to the conclusion of after 3 odd weeks of that bin sitting at the end of the road is either a neighbor that has moved out or someone else grabbed our recycling bin and then that's theirs. So I decided coming home from work today, I saw it there and I said, you know what? I'm just going to wheel it to their house and use it. And, I'm not stealing it. I'm not a thief. Because if I fill it full of cardboard and then put it back at the end of the road where the next lot of recycling is, and someone claims it as theirs and takes it back to their house, that's fine. It was just a loan. But I'm thinking at this point, it's been there for so long and no one's claimed it. I think I'm claiming it as my own.
Wait a second, Tim. I even think I know which one you're. So what our listeners don't know is on my way home from work, I passed by Tim's area that he lives in. He kind of lives in like what I would describe as row houses where they're connected. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said for him, it would make sense. Because the reason I asked, well, how would you even know if it was yours is we have city provided recycling and trash cans. I have the same recycling bin and trash can as Tim does. Right. Mm-hmm. So they all look identical. So that's why I was curious how he would even know, because I wouldn't know if it was mine. Like I have no clue. But there's one that's been sitting and I've seen it out of the corner of my eye when I drive home and it hasn't moved. That's got to be the one. Yeah.
So I decided that, it's been there for ages. So I decided it's time. It really is time to claim that bin, bring it back to the house, embrace it as a member of the family, and have it as our own.
Well, I'm disappointed nobody ever sent you pictures of like your recycling bin on the Eiffel Tower. Any of our listeners, I was hoping you guys had kidnapped it. We're going to take pictures and send it back to Tim. I'm glad you have embraced a new recycling bin. But also, I'm going to want to drop by. I'm going to peek out of the window and see if it's the one that I think, because it's been staying in the exact same place.
Yeah, it's been there. It's been there for weeks and weeks. Now, when I went and got it, it had a small red ribbon on the back of it. And now I didn't do that, and someone did that because it's their bin. However...
Did you take the ribbon off?
No, I left the ribbon on because my thought being is I'm going to use it, and then if I wheel it back and then someone claims it, I'll call the town and we'll figure it out. But I figured that maybe that person has our bin, I have their bin, and everyone is happy and the whole universe has sorted itself out.
They're identical bins, so if you're grabbing theirs and they're grabbing yours, it's really not that big a deal.
Exactly. So there we are, our friends in Germany, France, Australia, the Philippines. We had a new listener in Africa. There you go. Yeah, the saga of the town blue recycling bin for now has been settled. More updates as they come in.
This is a thrilling story. Like the ups and downs of this really do compete with Gone with the Wind or something, Tim.
But there you go. Well, anyway, on with the podcast. So this week it's my turn to pick the topic. Now, I had something like this a few episodes back, and Joy said at the time that she thought this was going to be a good episode. So this week's episode is called Compact Disc Memory Lane.
I would, as soon as you said that, I was like, I think I know where he's going.
So what I've done is I've gone through my CD collection and pulled out some CDs that I have that either I know where they came from originally or they have a particular memory associated with them. And then I was going to pick a track off of each one that we could discuss. Now, just to give all of our listeners some context, I had a huge CD collection up to about 2003, 2004. And I decided at that time that I wanted to buy a Gibson Les Paul guitar. So this was a time when used CDs had a value. I sold them all on eBay. Every last one of them I sold on eBay. And then the money I made from those CDs, I bought a Gibson Les Paul standard guitar Sunburst, just like the one that Slash would play or Jimmy Page would play. Mm-hmm. Incredibly nice guitar. It had the flame top and it was the whole thing. Beautiful guitar. However, I have a particularly not good back, and all my guitars are very light, and this Gibson Les Paul was very heavy. I played 3 gigs, a Thursday, a Friday, and a Saturday. And then by the Sunday, I was in the emergency room, the ER, with my back in the most pain I've ever experienced in my life. I then went through a period of time trying to get my back better. And then I think I may have played it one more time at like a freak jam or something for a few songs. And my back started twinging again. And I was like, no, this is not happening. So I sold the Gibson Les Paul and I bought a different kind of guitar. And I didn't end up with what I wanted. And I lost all my CDs in the process.
That was a heck of a story, Tim.
Yeah. So roll forward 20 years almost. So I'm now living here in the United States, and I decided I wanted to get a nice stereo system. And I thought, well, I love the CD format, I always have. So I've started rebuying CDs, and now they're basically free in thrift shops and Goodwill and secondhand shops and stuff. So I've been rebuilding my collection, and a lot of the titles I've been repurchasing are ones I used to have back in the day. So these are the ones that I have here are all from that repurchased selection of CDs.
Would you have an insane memory of knowing exactly where you bought all of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I know where they all came from, or they have a memory associated with them.
Fair enough.
All right. So I'm going to start off. The first one I'm going to start off with is No Doubt's Tragic Kingdom. Now, my original copy of this CD I bought from a cash converters in Perth, Australia, in October 1998, and I paid $3 Australian for it.
That's amazing. Are they called dollars there, or is there a different name for them in Australia?
No, it's just Australian dollars.
Okay. I thought it was something else.
And I seem to remember at the time the exchange rate was $3 Australian to £1.
So the cool thing about that album is that album has spider webs on it.
Yes,
which is one of the best. And that Spiderwebs is a remake of another song, right? What is it a remake of? That's going to come to me in a second. Anyway, what else is on the album while I'm thinking about it, Tim?
Yeah, you have Excuse Me, Mr. Just a Girl. I think the big hit off here that people would know is Don't Speak.
Or is it Don't Speak? One of the songs on that album is a remake of another song, and nobody could ever remember which one it is.
I thought they were all their own songs, but you are probably right. There's
one song that No Doubt does that is a cover of an original, and I think it's like a guy doing it maybe 70s, 80s, and nobody ever realized it was. I happened to find it on like a YouTube hole that I was looking, covers of originals. I'm going to have to look that up because that's going to drive me insane. But I'm a huge No Doubt fan, though. Okay, do you live in the camp that you really think they're ska, or do you think they're not ska?
I think this era is ska, or what you can consider contemporary ska. I think as they went down their career, they became more electronic, as a lot of those acts ended up becoming. And I don't think, if they exist today, or what their last output was when they were a band, I don't think it was ska. This has ska two-tone type stuff on it with a modern twist.
You know what I'm thinking of? It's My Life. Talk, talk, talk.
Yeah, that's on a.
That's not that album. Okay.
No, that's several albums on, and yeah, that is a cover of Talk Talk.
That's what I was thinking. For some reason, my mind thought it was that album, but after you started talking, it dawned on me. But anyway, ignore everything I said. Yeah, I mean, I think they started out ska, and if you hear earlier, No Doubt, it definitely has that feel. And the only thing I'm not super up on my ska music. I always just think Mighty Mighty Boss Tones when I think ska music. I don't know if that's just what comes to mind. There's probably someone out there who's like huge in the genre who's like, that's an insult. I'm sorry, internet, if it's an insult, don't come for me. That's just what I associate. But I do think they have the sound.
Yeah, I mean, it's like saying, the Sex Pistols is punk and Green Day is punk. I mean, that Sex Pistols is considered, the classic era of punk, but, music moves on and things are modernized and what have you. And I think that's the same with No Doubt. This is probably 90s contemporary ska.
I could agree with that. Oh, another band that I associate with ska is Real Big Fish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got some of their stuff. That
would probably be the other band that I come to mind. And not that I'm a super up on it, but I will say, there's this one song that I did not. What is the one? Did you know there's a song from No Doubt where she talks about sour milk spilling on the floor. So, Gwen Stefani has a kind of fast, almost when she's doing that ska sound, almost sounds like rapping in a weird way of saying it. Mm-hmm. So there's a song where she's like, she's going, sour milk spilled on the floor because I forgot to shut the refrigerator door. That's the reason you've been acting so cold. And she says it so fast, I never realized that's what she was saying. So then whenever I went back and heard it, this was my version of misheard lyrics. I had no idea what I thought that song was about. But my mind was blown when I found out that woman was saying about sour milk on the kitchen floor. Never in a million years did I think that's what she was saying. There you go.
Well, there we are. Anyhow,
that's related, but that's just what I think of when I think of No Doubt.
Okay, all right. So I'll move on to the next one. This one is the Metallica Black album, the classic Black album that came out in 1991. I bought my original copy of this from Woolworths in Hounslow High Street, and I have a very particular memory of going in there and buying it and then getting on the 281 bus to go to Twickenham, which is where I lived at the time, and I was sitting on the top deck of the 281 and I had opened the CD up and I was reading the book, and I remember it as if it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, probably.
You know what the most distinct thing about opening a CD was back in the day? Pulling the little thing off the top.
Do you know what's funny about that? UK CDs do not have that.
What? So for our UK friends in America, you pull like the rest, there's like the plastic wrap on the outside, but right across the top, and it'll be usually white with black lettering. It'll say like the album and the name, and you have to peel that off too. Yeah. And I'm guessing it's a seal so people don't steal CDs, would be my theory.
Yeah, or I think the idea was it's in a retail environment. It's on the top edge. So like you'd have them in the racks and you could flick through them and then you could see at a glance what's on them all. But UK issue CDs didn't have that. And then likewise, back when the CD first came out, in the United States, they had a thing called the long box. Mm-hmm. And the long box was a regular CD, but in a, as the name suggests, a very tall, long box. And the reason they did that is all the record shops were, at the time, was set up for 12-inch records, and they didn't want to buy new shelving. So they came up with this long box idea that would fit in the existing vinyl racks, so they could sell CDs in the same shelving until they decided to change the shelving.
And that wasn't so long ago, because I actually remember that. And I've seen it in movies when they're flipping through. If you ever see some old school American movies, you could see that. It'll be like almost like he's saying, it's really long. It's about the width of a CD, but it's tall. And it makes it easy for them to flip through on those like record areas Tim's talking about.
Yeah. And in England, the long box was not a thing. Because I know at the time there was a campaign in the United States that's saying they're trying to ban the long box because they said it was unnecessary packaging and unnecessary waste. And, you know, a lot of artists are into environmental issues and things like that. And they said they didn't want all this additional plastic and packaging that wasn't necessary.
I mean, that does make sense because they were very long and it was kind of useless. And it had plastic at the bottom of it to hold it up. So this is going to sound really dumb. Another thing I like about opening CDs, and the reason you brought this up is you distinctly remember opening the Black Album from Metallica. It's across the top where the plastic was. You know how it kind of like crisscrosses in the corners? Mm-hmm. Like, is that just an American thing, or the corners crisscross in Europe too?
No, it's the same thing because they shrink wrap them, and then you're trying to pick the corner off, and it won't come off. And...
I was going to say that's one of the most iconic parts of opening a CD. Trying to get that stupid little plastic in the corner off.
I used to work for a company called Nakamichi that were famous for making cassette decks, And they used to have CD openers. And what that was is like a metal thing that sits on the edge of the CD, and, you know, so big, and just goes over the edge. And it had a razor blade in the middle of it. So you could just go, and then it would just peel off.
Oh, but that kind of takes away the fun of it. I think in good spirit, I'd rather try to open it with my fingers.
Exactly.
I have very distinct memories of trying to get those open.
So answer me this one, Joy. Did you ever try and open up one of those CD corners with like a bread knife and then cut your finger off?
No, but I have been injured by a CD. Well, a CD case. So my older sister and Aqua, it was Aqua, the blue one with the which had Barbie Girl on it, but it had all the other songs that you know from Aqua. Mm-hmm. So she had it in her car or something, and it had broken. Like the case had broken, and there was a sharp edge. So when I went to open it, I did cut my finger once on a CD case. So nothing with the opening, but later on, Aqua's CD did get me. Which was it just self-titled Aqua? What's the name of that album?
I think it's just Aqua.
Because I think it was just like in big blue, like in the letters and the bubble letters, it just said Aqua. So I think it was a self-titled album. But anyway, I actually love Aqua. I think a lot of the music outside of Barbie Girl was pretty cool, but you don't really hear it very much. Dr. Jones is a classic.
I'm familiar with that track, in fact.
That's a great album.
Anyhow, the Black Album, what more do you need to say? Sad but true, Enter Sandman, Nothing Else Matters, etc., etc. It was the rebirth of Metallica, where they got together with Bob Rock, and they went from being a thrash metal band to a
So, Tim, band. I don't know if you meant to do it, but Nothing Else Matters is a track on the album. But the way you went, Enter Sandman, Nothing Else Matters. It flowed like right into it. That's a good pun. Unintended, but it worked.
There we go. We'll be here all night. Don't forget to tip your waitress and bartender. And when you finish tipping, her, return her back to the upright position.
All right. What's next, Tim?
Okay. So the next one, this is Janet Jackson's Control. Now, I had this on multiple formats. I had this on record, cassette, CD, and I even had the 12-inch vinyl remix album as well. I was super into this when this came out. But my original CD copy came from W.H. Smith's in Hounslow High Street. I don't think they sell... I don't know if... I assume they're still there. It ended up getting a post office in it. I don't even know, but they probably don't sell records or anything in there anymore. But anyhow, I bought that album in there, and I was absolutely obsessed with Janet Jackson's Control. Are you familiar with this?
What have you done for me lately? Ooh, yeah. Nasty's on there too.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's got Control, Pleasure Principle, When I Think of You. This is an absolute classic. And I mean, I would not
epitome of Janet.
Yeah, I would not call this contemporary R&B. To me, this is like heavy pop.
Yeah. I associate her more as a pop artist than anything else. I feel like and maybe that's just me, but I kind of feel like I always associate Janet. This is going to sound really bad. Please don't come for me, internet. So I associate Janet and Paula Abdul together in the same realm. And the reason that is, though, is they're both dancers and they dance very well. Mm-hmm. But Janet was a much better singer than Paula Abdul. Paula Abdul put on a really good show, but Janet had more. And Janet wasn't like an astoundingly great singer, but I do think her vocals were better. But yeah. I do think they were in the same realm, and so I associate them with that same kind of pop sound.
Yeah, I think for me, Paula Abdul is somebody who sort of was manufactured into a pop career, whereas Janet Jackson came from a musical family and she had the talent along with all of her family, and it was a logical step that she would be the next one to be out there and make it.
I agree with that, because with Paula, she was a Lakers girl and she did all the choreography. She's a great dancer. Mm-hmm. But do I think she's a pop star or icon? Not really. But I do think that Janet had both things going for her. And that's why, even though I associate them in the same pop music kind of realm, I think Janet was the more technically talented person. I mean, I like Paula Abdul, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I do think Janet was more talented.
Yeah. And Janet... Miss Jackson, if you're nasty.
Tim's been waiting to say that this entire time since he brought that album up. Had to find a way to sing that right in there. Anyway.
Well, there we go. There's Janet Jackson for you.
This is just going to be full of puns, isn't it, Tim?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we can exclusively reveal we're recording on a day we don't normally record on, so we're loose and free tonight.
It's because of the recycling bin news. It just took this on a crazy start from the beginning, Tim.
There we go. All right. So this next album, I didn't purchase it myself. However, it was purchased for me at my request.
Okay.
So my dear friend Linda Dobson and her husband Alan, I used to work with them when I worked at Nationwide Building Society, and they often would go on great trips. So you'd have great adventures and go on great holidays, all different places. And they went to Austria. I think they went skiing in Austria. And it was around this time that I discovered the musical works of David Hasselhoff.
I didn't know what he was holding, but I should have predicted that one.
And I attempted to buy this album in a shop local to where we worked. And I tried to order it, and they couldn't get it. And this was before the internet existed. So you'd have to go into a shop, and they had a system they could look titles up. And they claimed they could get it. And they said, yeah, it's going to be so many weeks. And it never came. And they just couldn't get it. It was deleted or something.
Okay.
Anyway, so I said, because we all know David Hasselhoff is big in Germany. He's a huge musical star in Germany. So she was going to Austria, which is, they speak German, so I figured it was close enough. So I said to Linda, I said, if you get any time and when you're there, can you look in like a record shop and see if you can find me a David Hasselhoff album?
So is this the one that has that Looking for Freedom? What's on this? I don't know Hasselhoff that well.
Yeah. So they go into a record shop.
Okay, there's more.
And they thumb through and find it. And they actually bought me two, but this is the best one of the two. And she said she went to the counter to pay and gave the CDs to the guy to pay. And apparently this guy gave her a look, was like, really?
You want both of them?
Yeah.
Both of them.
Anyhow, so I ended up with this. And the album is David Hasselhoff's Looking for the Best. And the name is from his song Looking for Freedom.
That's the only real song I know from him. Would you say that's his biggest hit? I feel like that's his biggest hit.
Yeah, in the realm of Hasselhoff.
And if you had to pick a hit, that's the one I would say, because it's the one I know. But I really don't know any more about that. I do know David Hasselhoff was in the SpongeBob movie, but that's not related.
No, and he was singing Looking for Freedom when he was personally responsible for the fall of the Berlin Wall. If you've ever seen that video.
No, but I need to go see it now. You have to post it.
So Dave, so imagine this, like there's 1 million Germans either side of the Berlin Wall.
Okay.
They're tearing the wall down.
Like they
Communism is over in Germany. David Hasselhoff is on a cherry picker over the top of the Berlin Wall, right by the Brandenburg Gate. He is wearing a black Knight Rider leather jacket, which has bulbs in it, which are all chasing like this. He has a white piano tie. And he has got his big Hasselhoff Knight Rider hair, and he's singing Looking for Freedom.
I hate everything about this, but I kind of love it. I don't know how to feel.
I would look. I mean, we will post this up in the Facebook group. You have to see, if you've never seen that footage before. You cannot even begin to understand the ridiculousness of it.
I mean, would I expect anything less from him? No. Is that what I expected? No. I love how he had the piano tie. That's what really brought it all in. Ties it really good together. Just so you know, he's a musician, everybody. He is a musician. He's wearing a piano tie.
See, there you go. That's all you need to know. But I mean, he's got some other great songs on here. Crazy for You, Do the Limbo Dance. There's a video for that. Again, if you're a bit low, watch David Hasselhoff's Do the Limbo Dance music video. It is utterly appalling, but it's fabulous at the same time. Hot Shot
my
City.
Life advice going forward.
Hot Shot City. Oh, there's a song in here called Do that he sings in German. He clearly can't speak German. It's beautiful.
I was about to ask, does he speak German? But you answered that for me.
No. Is Everybody Happy? That's a great song. Not really. Everybody Sunshine. But the best thing about this album, it's on the Hassel Hits label.
I can't. So I do have a Hasselhoff fact for you, bingo card listeners out there. Tim, did you know he has actually set a Guinness World Record as the most watched man on TV?
I could believe that because I think I may have said before, like Knight Rider made him famous, but Baywatch made all his money. And the first season of Baywatch, I've actually just watched it recently. It's not good. But it sold very well. But
that was the follow-up. It's not good.
No, the first season's not good. But it sold very well internationally. So he bought the rights from it from NBC, got some investors in, bankrolled it, and then they made more of them and then sold them internationally. And as a result of that, that's where he made all his money. But equally, because it's so popular internationally, it's been seen by more people than any other TV show.
Well, and it's been syndicated at this point, so you could find it on, like, you know what I mean, TBS or something at any given time in America. Not that me and Tim have actual TV service, but he knows what I mean. So is syndication a thing in Europe, or is that more of an American thing?
It's more of an American thing. I mean, I had to find out what syndication was because I wasn't really sure what it meant, but I know now.
So syndication is when, like, so a good example is like Sex and the City used to only be on HBO, but then once you get syndicated, other channels can like buy it and play it. So like all these shows like Sex and the City, Friends, Seinfeld, Baywatch, those are just the first ones that come to mind, have all been syndicated. So at any given time on daytime television, if you click your remote, you'll find it on all these channels like A&E, TBS, whatever. So that's probably helped because it plays pretty much all the time.
Exactly.
There's my history lesson for everybody. Or yay! I guess no. I don't know if that's history or verbal. Whatever that kind of lesson was. There it is.
Splendid. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. This I bought from John Menzies. Now, John Menzies is a newsagent in the UK. I don't know whether they exist anymore, but they certainly did for a while. Okay. And opposite where I used to work at Nationwide was a John Menzies. And it, you know, by a newsagent, they sell newspapers, magazines, they sell sweets, snacks, stuff like that.
Kind of like a convenience store?
Sort of, but it's probably more based around newspapers and magazines. But it's same kind of principle. So gotcha. I got this from John Menzies, and this is the soundtrack to Electric Dreams.
Oh, that movie you made Charlie watch.
Yeah.
Tim had my husband, Charlie, watch Electric Dreams because he had never watched it. Tim's got a lot of strong feelings about this movie.
Well, actually, what did Charlie think about Electric Dreams?
Oh, he loved it.
Oh, he did?
He thought it was great. Yeah, it was right up his alley. You predicted that one. Well, Charlie loves a good, I hate to say this, cheesy 80s film anyway, and anything involving kind of like an IT electric. And that's the one where the computer comes to life, right?
Yeah, it's called Edgar. The computer's called Edgar, and it's voiced by Bud Cort. And Bud Cort is the guy who's in that film Harold and Maude. And
then the guy like falls in love with the computer.
No, or the computer
falls in love with the guy.
The girl, the lady who lives next door to the guy and the computer thinks all that beautiful music is being played by the guy, but in fact, it's the
what
computer.
It was. Okay, I didn't watch it as much. I just remember Tim making the recommendation, Charlie going on not uTorrent and finding a copy potentially, and watching it the next day and said it was great. But yes, Tim recommended this to us. Though, does it have a good soundtrack? I never really heard much about it.
The soundtrack is fantastic. I mean, you've got that Together in Electric Dreams, which is Giorgio Moroder and Phil Oakey. It's got Jeff Lynne on it. It's got Heaven 17, Culture Club, P.P. Arnold. I mean, this in my opinion, the soundtrack is really good. It's really strong. And all of the songs on this soundtrack feature in the film.
Yeah, so that's cool. And I'm guessing it's probably all 80s kind of sounding music to go with the theme of the film. Question, what was I going to say? Don't know, Tim. I had a thought about that movie. It is completely gone now.
Well, I can give you two facts about the movie. So The most of that film was filmed in San Francisco.
Okay.
The interiors of that film, when they're in the apartment with the computer, was filmed at Twickenham Film Studios, which is Twickenham, where I used to live. And there's a famous film studio right by the British Rail Station where where the Beatles filmed all that Let It Be footage that's been coming out recently. That was all filmed there at Twickenham as well. It's been lots of films have featured on that stage at Twickenham. So that was featured there. I don't know if you know, there's a bit in that film where they're in a supermarket and like the supermarket freaks out and refuses his credit card and all that sort of stuff.
Not particularly.
Oh, maybe because I'm a Patrick Dreams super fan, I don't know. But that was filmed in Addlestone, and Addlestone is not super close to where I used to live, but it's not that far from where I used to live. And for some reason, they filmed it in this supermarket in Addlestone, which is a UK supermarket, and then they had to mock it all up to look like a US supermarket by bringing in US products and US signage. I don't know why you didn't just film that in San Francisco when you did the exteriors.
That's what I say. Why wouldn't you just film that in America? It seems more cost effective. So I remembered my question. I feel like this movie, based off of what you've said, it feels like one of those movies that have become a cult classic of a sense. Like there's probably a diehard cult that loves that movie.
Yeah, it is a cult classic. And the other thing, it's almost impossible to find because they did a DVD run of it, and which is long since deleted. Of course, it came out on VHS, but it's not on any streaming services. It's really hard to find. And I was lucky that I stumbled across it on the internet, and it was on HDNet. And HDNet is like a cable channel or a satellite channel, which at the very beginning was showing films in high definition when that was a big selling point. Of course, everyone has high definition now, but at the time HDNet was a channel which specialized in showing things in high definition. So the copy I have was recorded off of HDNet, so it's very good quality. However, the intro of the film was not right. It didn't have the right intro because originally I had a copy that was taken from VHS. So using my editing skills, I took the first minute intro off of the VHS copy, tagged it on the HDNet version, and then took the music off the CD and then made it all sync up.
Wow, that's a lot of dedication for one movie, Tim. I guess it really is a cult classic.
I mean, I'm making it sound harder than it was. It's probably 25 minutes of my time, but I mean, I did that.
Well, there you go, Tim. You got so many talents in your life. That's included.
Editing cheesy 80s films to my liking.
What was it? Oh, yeah. You guys, on Facebook last night, I put a status. I said, Tim's going to have to add correcting Joy's pronunciation on No Name Music Cast to his resume before it's all said and done.
Joy, I just let you run with it. It's fine.
Lord, it wouldn't be the same without me.
But it wouldn't. I'd be sitting there talking to myself about CDs I bought once.
They'd be like, oh, it's the British guy again. All right, what's the next album?
Okay, so this next one I bought from Woolworths, and actually Woolworths in Twickenham, not actually that far from Twickenham Studios, so it all ties together. And for those who don't know, Woolworths is a general store chain that famously went bankrupt 15 years ago or so, maybe a bit longer than that, but they went bankrupt. Anyhow, this is Duran Duran's Decade.
Okay.
And this is a compilation album. I typically steer clear of compilation albums because I prefer having sort of a proper album that, somebody has worked on the track sequencing, or, there's a theme that runs through the album, or it's, it's a snapshot of someone's career at a certain point. I really don't like this where they just put all the hits on one album. However, in the realm of Duran Duran, you cannot go wrong with this. I mean, Planet Earth, Girls on Film, Hungry Like the Wolf, Rio, Save a Prayer, Is There Something I Should Know, Union of the Snake, The Reflex, Wild Boys, View to a Kill, Notorious, Skin Trade. I mean, every one of these tracks, bam, 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 bam.
I went through a period in my life where Girls on Film was in my head, I think, for 3 months straight. Fairly certain all I heard was Girls on Film for like 3 months. And I don't know why. Probably because Duran Duran is really catchy. I mean, Hungry Like the Wolf, Rio, they're all very catchy songs, kind of like the remote. But for some reason, that song, I don't know, because I feel like it's another one. I say this a lot, but I do feel like it's been used a lot of, ironically, it's talking about Girls on Film, but I also think it's been used in film a lot. So that's probably why.
Well, there's two videos to Girls on Film. There's the MTV video, and there's the video that probably is never ever going to be played again.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But I will say another story about Duran Duran videos. I think we may have covered it before. The video for Wild Boys. Did we ever discuss the video for Wild Boys and how much distress that brought me when I was younger?
No. I would remember this. No.
Okay, so there was a number of like Saturday morning TV shows on British TV. There one called Swap Shop with Noel Edmonds, and there was another one called Saturday Superstore. But Swap Shop was probably the most famous one, and I think Swap Shop was on when this came out. And they used to show pop videos and what have you on there. And there's a video for Wild Boys, and it's set in sort of a dystopian future type idea. And there's what can be described as like a windmill, and Simon Le Bon is tied to one of the bits of the windmill. And this windmill's going round, and he's singing "Wild Boys," blah 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 blah. But at the bottom of the windmill is like a not like a swimming pool, but like a mass of water. And when it goes round and gets to the bottom, it dunks his head under the water, and then it comes back round.
Seems like a weird case for waterboarding.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be like dystopian future idea, but I don't know. I just found that very disturbing, and even now I think about that.
It sounds horrible, honestly. Like it's a human, like think about this logistically. First of all, I don't want to be spinning on a windmill to begin with, but to add the idea that every so often your head would have to get dunked underwater, it really does sound like a morbid version of waterboarding. Yeah, I mean, I keep meaning to watch it as an adult, but I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. His eye starts twitching at the mention of it. There's some PTSD there. Now, I will say, if I had to pick one song from Duran Duran that I think is like their everybody latches onto it, you hear it too much song, it's got to be The Reflex.
Yeah, that's a great song.
It is a great song, but I do think it's their most, like if I turn on the radio tomorrow, it's the one I'd probably hear.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with that. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, all of this stuff from the
I like Duran Duran, so
yeah, all this stuff from the classic era of Duran Duran, you cannot go wrong with. I mean, they had many albums after this, and I think they're still out there playing, still getting it done. But I think if you was going to delve into the world of Duran Duran, Decade is what you need. They made other compilation albums after this, but Decade is pretty much where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. As soon as you started naming it off, I kind of figured what songs would be on there, and I was correct. Well, what's the next album, Tim? Where are we going next?
The next one, I didn't actually purchase. I acquired. And this, unusually, this is the original copy. This isn't a repurchase. This is the actual one. This is one of the few that survived through that great CD sale of 2002 or whenever, 2003, whenever it was.
Okay.
So this album, recently remastered, reissued, and available on all digital platforms. And this is Frequencies, Swimming with the Big Fish.
So that one stayed.
That one stayed. I have two copies of this album. I have this copy, which has been opened and played, and I have a sealed copy. And now for our friends who are not part of the Freak Jam community, or if you're listening in Kilimanjaro or something like that, or China, and you don't know what this is, Frequency was a band which existed in the early 2000s. This album came out in 2004, and I play lead guitar on this album and also have co-songwriting credits on a lot of the songs. Ian wrote all of the lyrics, and a lot of the riffs and the jams that we created ended up being this album. And I said it's just recently come out again on Spotify and Apple Music and all that kind of stuff.
It's called iTunes.
iTunes and what's it, MySpace and Friendster. It's always all out on there. Wherever you get digital music, you can get this album. But this is the original copy, and this is one of a few that I have that is this.
That's amazing. So what are some of the names of the songs on it, Tim?
Well,
not that they would know, but
no, I mean, Sound of Thunder is the one that often is requested on the online Freak Jam, and Wispy's covered that before. A shout out to Wispy. I don't think we've mentioned you before on the podcast, but shout out to him. He's covered Sound of Thunder, and lots of other people have who've been in and around the music community that I used to be involved with and still am, luckily. Probably my favorite track on here is probably Curse of Common Man. That is an absolute classic track. Tomorrow's good. Hit and Miss is good. I mean, to be honest with you, it's hard to be objective about this because I played on it, I co-write most of it, and I really like it. And having had the opportunity to reconnect with the people who I made this music with recently has been an absolute joy. So coming back to this and listening to this fresh brings back those memories, and I'm back connected with Ian, and I'm back connected with the folks who was a part of this album. There you go.
So one thing our listeners don't know about Ian, and I guess about you, is the opening track and the closing track of our podcast is Ian singing and Tim playing, correct?
That's correct. So, yeah, our opening and closing music is Another Day, which is taken from this album. Now, the version that we use on the podcast is not the version that's on Swimming with the Big Fish. It is a demo version. So when we was putting together this album, we made some live in the studio demos of a lot of these tracks to decide how we was going to arrange them and what we wanted to do with them. So the version you hear of Another Day, which opens the podcast, is the demo versions. But if you go onto Spotify or any of your digital platforms, you will hear the CD album version.
So there you go. You guys can actually, if you like the way that sounds, go find the real version.
Yeah, so check out Frequencies Swimming with the Big Fish.
Yay.
And that is a party political broadcast on behalf of the Freak One C party. Okay, so the next one. So there was this shop called That's Entertainment in Hounslow High Street. And a lot of other shops in Hounslow High Street and other retailers would sell records, tapes, CDs, etc. And they would do the same. However, what they used to have was a lot of limited edition and rare items and picture discs and stuff that you couldn't get anywhere else that was sort of cool. And I remember buying Queen 12-inch picture discs and weird cassette singles and stuff like that. And somehow they used to get that stuff and it was cool. So I started to discover rock music because, as I may have mentioned before, most of my upbringing, I was just a top 40 pop kind of person. But when I started to learn how to play guitar, I learned a lot more about rock music and guitar-based music. So I had a cassette of this, but I wanted to then go and buy it. So I bought the CD copy, and it is Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. The interesting thing is that the copy that I bought has a different cover. Now, the original cover for this album, and I'm going to show Joy, but obviously this is an audio podcast and you can't see it. It's that picture. Okay. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I can see it.
And it's a piece of artwork by Robert Williams that's called Appetite for Destruction. And it's, I mean, look up the picture. I'm not going to describe it, but look up the picture. There's a lot of bad stuff and chaos going on in that picture. And originally, that was the cover for Appetite for Destruction. So I bought this thinking that's the cover and, you know, enjoyed the music. And then sort of shortly after the fact, when I was going back into record shops, I noticed the cover was now the cross, sort of the kind of cross with the caricature faces on it. And it turns out that a lot of retailers would not carry it because of that photograph. So they had to change the cover up.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, to be honest, I've only ever seen that version with the cross that you're holding up. I've never seen the original, so it must have been very short-lived.
Yeah, apparently it is. If you have either a record or a CD with that Appetite for Destruction cover on it, is a lot rarer. I don't know if it's actually worth any money, but it's certainly a lot rarer.
And just kind of cool. I mean, though, the album's literally called Appetite for Destruction, so in theory, it would make sense why that would be the cover.
Sure. And I mean, you know, this is a hard rocking, hard living band. So yeah, the fact that they're going to have a controversial cover with bad stuff happening on it, it fits the narrative of the album. But equally, Geffen Records probably wanted to sell units, so they ended up having to make them change. Or they just changed it and didn't tell them, which is probably what happened. That's
probably more likely to make it more. I mean, let's be honest. So Guns N' Roses is not really I mean, they're not the hardest band in the world, but I don't associate them as your family friendly, happy-go-lucky band either. So the people who are buying their albums, I don't think are necessarily thinking that's what they're getting.
Exactly. But I mean, this album has all these hits on. This was actually their debut album. And you know, it's got Welcome to the Jungle on it. It's So Easy, Night Train, Mr. Brownstone, Paradise City, Anything Goes, Rocket Queen, and that song that starts with an S, which I'm not going to talk about because I'm sick to death of it.
It's not a bad word. Well, in Tim's mind, it is. Well, to be fair, that was one of the ones you challenged me to listen to, I'm pretty sure. That was on your list of ones. So I think the song that stood out to me the most on the album that I wasn't as that familiar with was Mr. Brownstone, I think. That was probably my favorite of the album.
Yeah, Mr. Brownstone is talking about the fact that they're all hooked on heroin.
Well, a lot of good songs are about drugs. Semi-Charmed Life in the 90s was about doing meth. And it sounds like the most happy, upbeat song you've ever heard.
Well, this one also has Night Train, which is, well, I mean, we've discussed this before. Night Train is what they call a bum wine, one of those very cheap wines that you get in a gas station.
Four Loko.
Cisco.
I have memories. Ugh.
Wild English Rose. My
eye starts twitching thinking about it. Just skip it. So have you ever heard of this is probably an American thing, but there's an alcohol here. It's called Mad Dog. Did you guys have Mad Dog?
Mad Dog 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't stand for Mad Dog. It's like it's the brewing company. It's like McDonald and something it stands for. See, I never remember it growing up, and I never saw it for sale anywhere. But people here talk about Mad Dog 2020. And subsequently, I've had people in England speak of Mad Dog 2020. So it must have been available somewhere. So it's kind of what I was associated with what Tim was just talking about. Something cheap you buy at the gas station on your way home. And so there's a thing, I don't know if you've ever heard of mad dogging somebody, but it's like, and now as an adult, I realize you don't have to do this, but as a younger adult, I thought you had to fall in lines of alcohol culture. As a grown up now, I just laugh at you and walk away. When you mad dog someone, you buy a bottle and they're supposed to drink it. Well, I had that happen to me. And the color of the Mad Dog was the same color as Windex. Like, if that alone tells you shouldn't drink it, I don't know what does. You shouldn't drink things that are the color of Windex. That's my life advice to you. Well, what people have told me about Mad Dog 2020, I think you'd actually be better off drinking Windex. Oh, Lord, no. It doesn't even taste good. Nothing about it is good. Just skip it. If you see it that's my life advice. If you go in the grocery store, just walk right past it. And I can give you a Windex pro tip. If you have dirty windows in your car, don't buy Windex wipes, even though they tell you on the internet they're perfect for the inside of your windscreen. They are not, because I bought a pack of Windex wipes for the inside of my car where it got a bit dirty, and I thought, this would be easy. And I read up, looked at the reviews on Amazon. I said, yeah, Windex wipes, that's what you want to do. You wipe the inside of your window, it's going to make it nice, sparkly clean, and you just go let it dry, and you go back over again, and then there's no smears, and it's perfect. Perfect for automotive use. Mm-hmm. So I buy a packet of Windex wipes. They come in. I clean the inside of my car. And I'm like, look at this. And then they take the Windex off and they're full of dirt. It's super clean. Perfect. Next day, drive out. Sun comes on the window. And there's so many smears and lines on it, I could barely see out the window. Tim barely made it to work that morning. Yeah. So I went home and I got the standard Windex out in the little squeezy bottle and I squeezed it around it and then I wiped it with that. Beautiful. Well, there's Tim's life tips on Windex. Not sure what it has to do with appetite for destruction, but there's his life tips on Windex. Add that to your Joy's life tips of don't drink things the color of Windex. And there you go, guys. There we are. Life tips for you all, thanks to the No Name Music Cast. Well, there was this back in the day, and you would know this, but there was on Nickelodeon in the 90s, there was a thing she said, vital tips for your everyday life. That's what she used to do, something that's funny. So that's what we'll call them, vital tips for your everyday life. Maybe we should make it a regular feature. We'll open the show and it's like, Joy, what tips do you have for us this week?
Don't cut your hand. That's probably would be one of my tips. Don't trip. Maybe I'm not good at giving tips.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next CD.
Okay.
This CD I bought in Our Price Records in Hounslow High Street. Hounslow High Street, for those who don't know, used to be quite the retail hub in West London. It used to be a regular road, and then sometime, I think it was 80s, probably late 80s, they pedestrianised it. And it's still pedestrianised. And at one time, it had all the major UK retailers in Hounslow High Street, and there was maybe literally 10 places in Hounslow High Street where you could buy records, tapes, and CDs. And now I'd be surprised if there's 3 retailers of merit down there, and there's certainly probably nowhere where you could buy a record, tape, or CD.
Well, that's a sad story.
Yeah, it's one of those towns that probably needs to boom again. It boomed, and it got a reputation for not being a great place to be. And I don't know, I read some things recently that suggest that they're trying to renovate it a little bit and make it a little bit better than it was. But I used to work there, I used to live there, very familiar with that whole area. Anyhow, so they used to have an Our Price Records, and which is a company which was, I think it was Richard Branson's wing of one of his companies that sold records, tapes, and CDs. And this album is the self-titled Alana Miles album. Are you familiar with this?
I feel like I'm only familiar with it because you've talked about her before. She's Canadian, right?
That's correct.
And I feel like her name came up, but I had no clue who you were talking about. You went on like a thing about her, but I don't know that much about her.
Well, to be honest, I don't know a huge amount about her apart from that she's Canadian. But the track that you will know, which has been karaoke'd and jam nighted to death, is Black Velvet.
Black Velvet. Yeah, that's the only thing I know of her. And I think you had this conversation in episode or 7 episodes or 5 episodes ago, who knows? But I remember you talking about her, and I said I didn't know who it was.
Yeah, so it's from 1989, this particular album. I have other work from Alana Miles on my computer, but this is the only one I have in physical format. I like Love Is off here. Still Got This Thing is good on here. Rock This Joint's a good song. But I mean, really, the centerpiece of this album is Black Velvet.
That makes sense. I mean, that's all she's really known. So would you classify her as a one-hit wonder then? I
think so. I mean, I'm sure maybe in Canada, maybe she's a big thing, but I only know her for Black Velvet and this album. And I bought this album because I used to listen to Capital Radio in London, and they used to have like America's Top 40 or American Countdown or something like that on it. And this was in the Billboard Top 100 or Billboard Top 10 or something that they used to play on that all the time. And I really liked it. So I went to Our Price Records in Hounslow and I bought it because I really wanted to find out what else was on this from Alana Miles.
I mean, that's fair. She has a nice voice.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I've heard of her, it sounds like her tone would probably transcend into other music as well.
Exactly. But anyhow, there's an Alana Miles for you.
All right, Tim, what's next?
Okay, so this next one, I mean, it feels like everything I've got here came from Hounslow High Street.
Not a trend.
But bearing in mind, I lived in Hounslow and worked in Hounslow, and that was where you bought stuff, and the internet had not been invented at that point. So, I mean, what are you going to do? So, I bought this one from HMV in Hounslow High Street. Now, HMV was a large national chain. I think there is still an HMV in London, in central London on Oxford Street, I think. And they were famous for having big superstores, like the HMV Megastore, I think it was called, or HMV Superstore. And where it was like the size of Macy's or something, and it was just records, tapes, CDs, and T-shirts and DVDs and all that kind of stuff. But then we had a smaller one in Hounslow, and I bought this when I worked at Nationwide Building Society because they used to get these vouchers for beating branch targets. Now, our branch, you always used to beat the target, so we always used to get these staff appreciation vouchers. So rather than buying clothes or something I actually tangibly needed, I always got HMV vouchers.
It's random. Anyway, okay.
So this was one of the ones I bought, and this is The Who's Tommy.
Oh, that's a good album. It's got like a pie on the front.
Yeah.
It looks like a pie.
I never really thought of it as a pie.
Or is it like that lattice stuff on the side of houses?
Yeah, it's like a lattice work, and it has like birds flying in clouds.
Okay, so maybe it's not a pie because lattice could be on top of a pie. That's probably like lattice scaffolding or whatever you call it on the side of a house. I thought it was a pie for a minute.
Yeah, no, it's like a lattice work. But this of course goes along with the film Tommy. It serves as a soundtrack to Tommy. There are two versions of this soundtrack. There's this one, which is the Who's standard issue album with them just playing on it. Okay. And then there is a soundtrack to the film, which has almost the same track listing, but it has the cast of the film singing on it together with the Who. And then some of the tracks have different people playing on it. Like Pinball Wizard, for example, on this album, on the one I have here, is the Who doing it. But on the movie soundtrack version is the Elton John version.
Interesting. I guess that. Do you think most people associate Pinball Wizard with the Who, or do you think they associate with Elton John?
I would think the Who. I would think so, but I mean the Elton John version is so good.
It really is. I had to be honest. I think I prefer his version.
Yeah, I mean his version has Pete Townsend playing guitar on it anyway, together with Elton John's backing band.
Yeah, there's something about the way he sold that song so well. I think he puts a different style to it or a different characteristic. Something about it draws me in more than their version. And that's not to insult the Who or anything. It's just a preference. Yeah,
and I mean, there's a few songs on the movie soundtrack. I think like Tina Turner sings one of the songs, and Oliver Reed sings one of the songs, and Anne Margaret sings one of the songs. I mean, I have that too, but I only got that recently. But this is the one that I remember buying way back when.
There's story behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, Tim, give us one more. What's your last choice?
All right. Let me pick out my last choice then. So let's go with this. Well, actually, let's go with this one. All right. So this one, if I'm being completely 100% honest with you, I can't remember where I bought it.
Darn.
But I have a particular memory that goes along with it.
Okay.
So this is Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill.
Great album.
Fantastic album. Alanis is angry. Men have annoyed her. She's angry with men. And then she came out with this. This is, and every song on this is full of spite, it's full of hate and anger. And it is her finest work. And it was written and recorded in a week. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that, but that's fantastic. Because, I mean, it's got You Ought to Know, Head in My Pocket, like all of her major tracks, actually.
Yeah, when you want your Alanis, you want angry Alanis. That's the state you want her when she's making an album, because when she's angry, she makes stuff like this. And it's produced by Glenn Ballard, who co-wrote some of the songs with her. But the reason I decided to bring this album out, I have a memory of this. So I think in the last episode or the episode before last, I can't remember, I was talking about going on the Channel Tunnel with my friend Ian Gilding. Now, one of those trips, I think maybe the first trip we ever made, I was new to having a car, and we decided that we would drive down to the Channel Tunnel port like hours and hours and hours and hours before we were supposed to be there. Like, ridiculous. Like, if we had to be there at 2:00 in the afternoon, we set off at 6 a.m. or something. It was ridiculous.
You're just figuring it out. It's fine.
Yeah, but I had this album in the car on a cassette tape, which I'd copied off the CD I originally bought. And whenever I hear this album now, it just reminds me of driving down to the Channel Tunnel hours and hours before the fact.
And then you had to sit there and listen to it in the car because you have hours to spend.
Yeah, but I think this was pre-GPS as well, so I think we might have got lost. So there may have been a number of listenings to Alanis's Jagged Little Pill.
So that makes me think of back whenever me and my twin sister, we had one car, and then eventually my parents got a second car for us. So we shared one vehicle, and then eventually they bought us a second one. They just kind of separated it out because it was easier to pay for, spread apart. But the first car we had, it had a CD player in it. And we left the same CD in it all the time. And I cannot, for the life of me, it's going to kill me, remember what that first song was. But every time we turned the car on, it was the same song. Because it was the same, because we only had like 5 CDs in that car at that time. I don't know why. We had more. It was just like laziness and not bringing it out. And this was like one of the mixed ones we've made. But I just distinctly remember getting so annoyed because every time I turned the car on, it was the exact same album. It's like it would restart. I don't remember exactly why. But I just remember thinking, oh my God, if I hear this song one more time, I had to vanquish the album at some point.
Well, there's a theory that if you leave a CD in your car long enough, eventually it turns into Queen's Greatest Hits.
Oh, well, that didn't happen. I should have left it longer. This is just a album I burned off the internet. And it was a mix of stuff. I want to say it was the Kinks. That was the first song that played. Mm-hmm. Like You Really Got Me or something was like the very first song. And I remember I'm like, not again. And I kept threatening it and I kept meaning to change it out. And I never did it. I don't know why. I also learned don't make your favorite song your alarm clock wake up. So when I was in college, I was obsessed with this band called All Time Low for like a short amount of time. And I made one of their songs my like thing on my, because it was like a CD player, like alarm clock. Mm-hmm. And so that song would be the first thing that would wake me up every morning. And one, I hate waking up. I'm not a morning person. 2, it made me hate the song. Never want to hear it again. Not even a little bit.
Well, there we go. That's another life tip from your friends at the No Name Musicast.
Yep. Don't get a CD player alarm clock and think that you're, oh my God. So speaking of that, this plays into the life tip. So one time I was at my friend's house and my friend Molly, she had put the Lion King soundtrack in hers. So at 8 a.m., her parents came rushing into the room because all of a sudden you're, oh, that was the opening of the album was The Circle of Life. And she said she's scared, and it was turned up really loud. And she said she's scared half the house. And her dad rolled in thinking like somebody had been attacked. Well, that's where I'll leave it. There you go, guys. There's my tip for the day.
There we go. Well, we will see you next week. See you later.
Bye.
To remind me of another day to